Yes, Anurag, can we begin?
Yes, good morning. Welcome to the 12th day of Bhagavad Gita part. We start with the meditation today. Over to you.
Suprabhat. Let us begin with invoking the divine for all his blessings. I sit in a comfortable position. Closing my eyes if I wish. Hands open, palms towards the heaven, arms slightly bent, open in a receiving position. I relax the muscles around my eyes and behind my eyes. I now focus on my breathing, the inhale and the exhale. I watch the rhythmic flow of my breath as it flows in and out, in and out, in and out. Now I take a few deep breaths, inhaling for 2 to 3 seconds, holding it, and then exhaling for 2 to 3 seconds. Deep breaths now. In, hold, out, in, hold, out, in, hold, and out. I come back to my natural breathing. Breathing naturally, I connect to the divine ray of consciousness, whose main quality is patience. Patience, the mother of all virtues. I activate the qualities of this ray of consciousness, which already exists within me. When I want life to hurry, when it becomes a dizzy rush, when a child's presence makes me impatient, or when I am waiting in a car and I defy time by continuously rushing, it is time to understand time. When I feel exasperated with the one I love, when I feel dismayed and I think the world is late, it is time to understand time, time to live, time to love, time to be. Patience helps us to discover those highest degrees of pedagogy which God uses for the creation of the world, of life plans for each one of us, knowing that sometimes for some of us it may take hundreds of lives before understandings can be inscribed in the souls. And yet, our celestial guides accompany us lifetimes after lifetimes with love, empathy, and compassion. I take another long, slow, deep breath in, hold it for a moment, and then slowly exhale. With every inhalation, the tensions in the various parts of my body are slowly getting released, and I gradually relax more and more deeply with each breath. I now bring my awareness to the top of my head and feel a wave of relaxation originating at the top of my head, flowing down to touch my forehead, which is relaxed. I relax all the muscles in my eyes and behind my eyes. This wave of relaxation flows down, relaxing each muscle, each tissue, each cell of the body, right to the tips of my toes. I take another long, slow, deep breath in, hold it, and then exhale, emptying my lungs completely with the out breath. I am now drifting into a state of deep relaxation. I continue to breathe slowly and gently. I now scan my body, and if I find tension in any part of the body, I breathe into that part and allow the tension to dissolve. I breathe in and out again. As the body relaxes, my mind relaxes, thoughts become less frequent. I bring my attention on the center of my chest and visualize a white light touching it and going within. This light illuminates my inside. I see what I see and I feel what I feel. As I bring my attention to my heart, I see the veil gradually lifting on my emotions, and I sense impatience, restlessness, anger when I am faced with new situations or situations which do not meet my expectations. I invoke this divine ray of consciousness, Krishna, 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 Krishna. This divine ray of consciousness helps me to be patient with myself as I falter. It helps me to be patient with my spouse and children in my moments of exasperation. It brings to me the patience to deal with the unexpected. It helps me to be calm when faced with trying situations or people. I now release all the impatience, restlessness, and anger and allow myself to come to a centered, happy, harmonious space. Now I can visualize a situation which had triggered impatience within me. And in this meditative state, I reflect how I could have been patient and resolved it differently. Great. As I visualize, I breathe in the divine energy intensely and deeply to understand the role of patience in the process of creation of the universe, my inner universe, and the outer universe, as within, so without, the interplay of the microcosm and the macrocosm. I let go of images, if any. Coming back to the here and now. I rub my palms, put them on my eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Coming back with more patience, less anger, and gradually moving forward to develop the purest quality of patience in all my interactions, all throughout my days. Welcome back.
Thank you, Swati, for that lovely meditation.
Thank you, Ram.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let us begin this journey of ours by invoking the blessings of the Lord, requesting Him to be with us for the next this journey of ours. Namaskaram, Shubhodaya, Namaskara, good morning. Welcome everybody to this wonderful chapter 12. I can't believe that, we've actually, we are now 2/3 of the way of this journey that we all embarked upon, the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've reached here. And I must thank all of you, deep gratitude to each one of you for participating so wholeheartedly in this whole process. It's been a great learning process for me, believe me. The preparation, the time that goes into it, and then even the kind of questions that are asked at the end. And I'm so grateful to all of you for that, because all of that is enhancing all the combined journey that we've all undertaken. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In many ways, as I explained to you yesterday, this is the chapter on which pertains to Bhakti Yoga. Okay, because chapter begins by Arjuna asking Krishna a simple question, saying that, look, in the previous chapter, O Krishna, you told me that somebody who wants to attain you, who is completely devoted to you. If you remember the verse number 55 in the last chapter, he says, be completely devoted to me, O Arjuna, and you will attain me. And elsewhere, in chapter 7 or even in chapter 4, okay, he says that, look, you must be a man of knowledge, you must be a man of wisdom. So naturally there is this conflict in Arjuna's mind, saying, okay, you've told me earlier that you need to be a man of knowledge and wisdom. You actually told me that, look, use the sword of wisdom to cut through the bonds of ignorance. And now you're telling me that I need to be completely devoted to you. Of these two, which is superior? Okay, so I think if you read the Gita from another perspective. Yesterday, if you recall, I told you that Arjuna's questioning itself is a huge research subject, because each time that he questions Krishna, each time that he asks this question to Krishna, there is a certain aspect of his conditioning and even our own conditioning that is being addressed by Krishna. And this is really the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita, is that you can kind of get lost in figuring out which aspect of the Gita would you like to study and which aspect of the Gita would you like to do some research on. Because believe me, it is so rich with knowledge, with wisdom, that we can get completely lost in that. So this chapter is entirely about Bhakti Yoga. In terms of size, it is one of the smallest chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. It has just 20 verses. But in those 20 verses, believe me, is packed an enormous amount of knowledge that Krishna shares with each one of us. And I'm hoping that today we'll be able to embark on that particular journey. So let's pick up this chapter with verse 1, which Arjuna is asking Krishna. And Srini, can you please play us that verse? And go ahead, please repeat. It's very nice.
तेषाङ्के योगवित्तमाः अथ द्वादशोऽध्यायः अर्जुन उवाच एवं सततयुक्ता ये भक्तास्मां पर्युपासते ये चाप्यक्षरमव्यक्तम् तेषाङ्के योगवित्तमाः.
Are you having any difficulty playing the slide and the Brahmanandaji's rendering, Shini?
No, I just did not share the screen.
अथ द्वादशोऽध्यायः अर्जुन उवाच एवं सततयुक्ता ये भक्तास्मां पर्युपासते ये चाप्यक्षरमव्यक्तम् तेषाङ्के योगवित्तमाः.
Anurag?
अर्जुन ने कहा, जो भक्त सतत युक्त होकर इस प्रकार से आपकी उपासना करते हैं और जो भक्त अक्षर और अव्यक्त की उपासना करते हैं, उन दोनों में से कौन उत्तम योगवेत्ता है, अर्थात अधिकता से योग जानने वाले कौन हैं?
So Arjuna's question, as I told you, is perhaps, so now this is, you can see a completely changed Arjuna now. Okay, this is not the questioning Arjuna, this is the inquiring Arjuna. So there is a complete change that has happened as far as even Arjuna is concerned in the 12 chapters. Okay, from a questioning Arjuna, from someone who's almost confronting Krishna in the earlier one, saying, what are you saying? Now this is now a person who's inquiring in and saying that, look, what do you think is the right thing, O Krishna? Please tell me. So he's asking him a simple question. I said, in chapter 7, verse 17, or even in chapter 4, I think, verse 35, he says, you must become a man of knowledge. You must be a man of knowledge and wisdom. And then in the last chapter, in chapter number 11, in 55, verse 55, he says, you become a man of devotion. So Arjuna's question is normal, saying, okay, what do you want me to do? Do I need to be a person who's completely devoted to you with bhakti? Or should I be somebody who is going to completely worship through knowledge and wisdom, this imperishable, formless higher self, the Brahman that we're talking about? Okay, and that's the question that Arjuna asks. And this question sets the tone for this entire chapter. Shrini, the next one, please. Verse number 2, I think you'll have. Yeah.
Shri Bhagavan मय्यावेश्य मनो ये मां नित्ययुक्ता उपासते श्रद्धया परयोपेताः ते मे युक्ततमा मताः.
श्री भगवान ने कहा, मुझ में मन लगाकर नियमित रहते हुए जो पूरी श्रद्धा से मेरी उपासना करते हैं, वो मेरे मत में सर्वश्रेष्ठ योगी हैं.
So this is Krishna's answer to Arjuna immediately. He says, look, those who are devoted to me are obviously much, they are people who are very close to me. Those are people who I take care of very clearly. So his answer is very simple. He says that, look, of the two, this is something which I would like you to look at. And he goes on to explain in verse 3, 4, and 5. He says, why? He says, look, those of people who worship the imperishable, the unmanifest, the omnipresent, unthinkable, unchanging, immovable, eternal, Brahma, it's a very difficult thing. They're good, they're devoted, and I like them a lot. But the point is that those are people that is very difficult for us humans with this body, because it is difficult for us to keep our mind focused on the unmanifest. It is difficult because that, we all of us reside in this human body, and it is difficult for us to keep our minds on that, unmanifest, omnipresent, unthinkable, unchanging, immovable, eternal aspect of life. So he says, Arjuna, it is better for you to adopt the earlier path, which is the path of devotion. Both the paths are good. You can take either of those and you will be devoted to me. And I will be, I will like you a lot. But then that is very difficult for us as humans. And therefore, it is this path of bhakti that becomes very important. Now, in the entire, if you look at Hindu philosophy in a way of speaking, there are three formats that we are taught. The first is Jnana Yoga, which is the knowledge and the wisdom. That is what we need to adopt to reach our higher self, to reach the Lord. The second is Karma Yoga, in which, he is dealt with extensively in the Bhagavad Gita, that you do your karma, and that's something which is very important. And the third aspect which we are taught is Bhakti Yoga. Now, the point is, all these three are ways of reaching the Lord. All these three are ways of achieving what we want to achieve in our life, which is this innate happiness that we require. So now Krishna is very clearly saying that, look, if you can start approaching everything with this attitude of bhakti, then that is something that you are going to be getting a lot out of. Okay, so he picks this thread up again, and I think verse 6 and 7. Srini, will you share that with us, please? We'll do both, Srini. Yeah.
ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्यु संसार सागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशित चेतसा.
अनुराग.
परंतु जो भक्तजन मुझे ही परम लक्ष्य समझते हुए सब कर्मों को मुझे अर्पण करके अन्य योग के द्वारा मेरे सगुण का ही ध्यान करते हैं.
Next slide, please.
हे पार्थ, जिनका चित्त मुझ में स्थिर हुआ है, ऐसे भक्तों का मैं शीघ्र ही मृत्यु रूप संसार सागर से उद्धार करने वाला होता हूं.
So this is his message to us. He says, look, you can choose both those paths. There's nothing wrong. I mean, you choose whatever makes sense to you. But those who are completely devoted to me, and those who have me in their thoughts all the time, by renouncing the fruits of their action to me, I will make sure that they are redeemed from this ocean of attachment to objects and relationships. It is this unflinching devotion to the Supreme Lord that he says, who resides in our inner self, is what is required. So he says, look, if you were to do this, I will help you cross. And that's what he's talking about, this entire ocean of birth and death. When he says that, look, this samudra that is there, I will help you cross that very, very clearly. Okay. And then he goes on to say something very important. He talks about the way of devotion. If you have to do this, what is the way of devotion that you need to adopt? And Srini, with your help, can we go on to verse number 8, please?
मय्येव मन आधत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवसिष्यसि मय्येव अत ऊर्ध्वं न संशयः.
तुम अपने मन और बुद्धि को मुझ में ही स्थिर करो, तदुपरांत तुम मुझ में ही निवास करोगे, इसमें कोई संशय नहीं है.
Right? So he is telling us very clearly, here is the way to devotion. Okay? I've told you that you adopt the path of devotion, adopt the path of bhakti. This is how you're going to do this. So fix your mind on me and me alone. Let your entire intellect, the knowledge, the wisdom reside within me. Okay? Because that emanates from me. If you recall, last chapter he told us about the wisdom that we're all born with. And he says that if you will do this, you will be with me without any doubt. So the point is this, very simple. There are so many times when we are on our path of our Swadharma and when we want to do something, there are lots and lots of thoughts that come into our mind. These are very interesting thoughts. Can I do it? Will I do it? Should I do it? Can we do it? Should I do it? Can we, all of these are thoughts that will keep coming into our mind at any point of time. Because this whole can I, will we, should we, can we do this? Can we not do this? So how do you get out of all these paths? How do you get out of all these questions? You overcome this with devotion. So you need to be completely devoted. Let the mind and the heart completely reside in the same space and say that, look, I trust the power of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, from that, let all the enabling thoughts start coming up to help me get onto this path of my Swadharma. And this is such a crucial thing that he's telling us, that look, if you get those doubts, and you will get those doubts, and he's telling Arjuna that, and through Arjuna he's telling all of us the same message, that when these doubts come, can I actually go and do what I want to do? Is it possible? Will I do it? Will we do it? Will we be able to achieve it? Can we actually go out and do it? So how do you get out of that kind of a situation, which when these thoughts are going to come your way, and you're going to start questioning yourself, saying, is it something that can be done at all in this? Okay? And here is the path that he says, that look, if you adopt this path of devotion, if you start putting your mind and your heart into this space of bhakti, then what will really happen to you is this, that at that point of time, you are going to get all the enabling thoughts that you want, that you're going to go. So just think about it. All the challenges that we've faced in our life, whether at a personal level, whether at a professional level, whether from a round table level, whatever, from a lady circle level, any challenges that we faced in life, and we've had these questions come up. Can I do it? Can we do it? At that point of time, it is really faith that has helped us to cross that river. So when he says that, look, this is the way that I will escort you across that ocean, that river of attachment, this is what he's trying to tell us, that look, develop that faith, have that faith in yourself, because if you do, there is quite simply nothing that you can't achieve. And this is a very, very important lesson that he tells Arjuna, and through Arjuna, he's telling us. Now he goes into a whole way of saying, what are the alternatives that you can do to reach me? Okay? And in verse 9, he says that, look, if you cannot focus on me, if you cannot focus your mind on me alone, if you can't be completely devoted to me, then start practicing that. It is that abhyasa that you can do to reach me. Even if you can't do that, sometimes that is difficult. If you're not able to do that, then do all your actions with me in mind. Say that, look, from today onwards, whatever I'm doing it for that higher self. I'm doing it as part of my Swadharma. I'm doing it to achieve what I want to achieve in my life. Even if you can't do that, even if you can't do that, fair enough, we understand. Even if you can't do that, then can you please, for God's sake, do something? All the actions that you perform, don't get attached to the outcome and the manifestations of that outcome. So he's very clearly saying that, look, here is a beautiful path that is available for all of us. First, do everything with me in mind. Be completely devoted to me. You can't do that, at least start practicing that. You can't do that, do whatever actions that you can and say that, look, I'm doing these actions and I'm doing it because I've got an opportunity from you, O Krishna, and I'm doing this for you. Even if you can't do that, then at least can you start renouncing the fruits of those actions? Can you overcome that temptation of getting carried away by the manifestations of the outcomes of your action? And therefore, can you be free from that And can you start doing that action in a way that will help you to get to what you want to get to? So this is a beautiful process that he has laid down for us very clearly, saying that, look, start small, start with saying, okay, I will not let those manifestations of the outcomes influence me. And then from there, can I start thinking that, look, I've got this opportunity from you to serve, and therefore I'm going to serve. I've got this opportunity from you to walk on my swadharma, and can I walk on it? And slowly but surely, can you get to that stage by which you can develop that bhakti, that devotion in Krishna, in the Krishna that is within you, in the higher self that is there within you. Can you start believing in yourself to go and achieve what you want to do? And that is his beautiful message to us through this through stanzas 9 to 11. So, it is natural that some of us may still be in a state of doubt. Okay, that yaar ye sab theek hai, but is it really possible? Can we actually start doing that? Can we overcome all of that? So remember one thing. You see, when you're walking and everything is smooth, you don't need any help, really, isn't it? If you're walking on the path of what you want to do, and you're continuously achieving what you're achieving in life, then really, there is no issue, there is no challenge. But when you're walking and you hit those obstacles in life, and yesterday, like Rajiv raised that issue saying, what if I come up with my perception and somebody else's perception? And then there is this, there is this innate conflict that happens. At that point of time, how do I overcome those obstacles? So when everything is smooth, okay, and if you're driving on this highway called life, and you're clipping at whatever 70, 80, 90 kilometers an hour, and there is no speed breaker, there is nobody on the road, life is great, that is the time when you don't need your brakes. But when you're seeing that obstacle in the path, when you see that cow crossing the road, when you see that guy crossing the road, when you see a speed breaker, when you see a toll gate, that's the time when you need that brake. And when you hit those brakes in life, obviously you'll have to now restart your journey. You can't turn around and say that, look, if that obstacle comes in the way of my life on the road, I'm just going to blow the horn twice, and if the obstacle doesn't move, doesn't matter, let me get on that obstacle. That's not possible, right? So when you hit that break in your life, when you hit that break in the road, and you need to restart, you need to go back from zero and start again, getting back to 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour. That is the time when you need to figure out how can you do that. And this is his path to all of us, saying that, look, whatever you do, here is the way that I'm telling you. Do it with complete devotion. Do it with complete faith. If you can't do that, fair enough. We understand. Try and start practicing this. Even if you can't do that, fair enough. We understand that. But can you start doing this in a way that the manifestations of those outcomes, the fruits of those actions that he keeps talking about, do it in a way saying, okay, fine, even if these manifestations happen, I'm going to be giving it to you. I'm doing it from a perspective that this is also for you. This is also for the higher self, and this is not something that I'm going to get attached to, and therefore I am not going to be allowing myself to stop and stall on this path of mine. So here is a beautiful way that he's explaining to all of us, saying, if you were to adopt this particular path, then should you ever hit that obstacle in life, this is one way that you can overcome it. So this is a beautiful lesson for all of us. And we pick this up again in verse number 12, when he shares with Arjuna another beautiful insight in this whole journey. Verse number 12, Ashwini.
Shreyo hi jnanam-abhyasat jnanat dhyanam vishishyate jnanat karma-phala tyagah tyagat shantiranantaram.
Yeah, Amran?
अभ्यास से ज्ञान श्रेष्ठ है, ज्ञान से श्रेष्ठ ध्यान है, और ध्यान से भी श्रेष्ठ कर्म फल त्याग है. कर्म फल त्याग से तत्काल ही परम शांति प्राप्त हो जाती है.
So here is his recipe for us as to why should we do what we said earlier. That when you want to restart, when you hit that obstacle in life, when you need to restart your car and start moving back from 0 to 80, what is the way to do that? And he beautifully encapsulated, this is your recipe for happiness, if you ask me. This is the recipe for peace of mind that we're all searching for in life. Ultimately, every one of us sitting here is saying that, look, how can I develop that peace of mind? How can I get into that state of happiness? And here is what he's saying. He says, first of all, understand one thing. Knowledge and wisdom is better than blind action. But even better than that is the ability to meditate. Meditate on what? Meditate on your higher purpose. Meditate in a way in which you're saying that this is my swadharma. You remember we talked about that concept of me time and how you can use it to actualize your swadharma. And he says it is better if you can do that. But even better than that is if you can renounce the fruits of your action, what we keep saying as the manifestations of the outcomes of your action. Even better than that is that. Because the minute you do that, automatically and immediately, you're going to get the kind of peace that you want. So, see, ultimately, what is Krishna's message through the Gita and through these 12 chapters to us, through these, through these chapters? He is saying that, look, how can you create those enabling thoughts that will help you to move ahead on what is your swadharma? And when you do so, how are you going to find that happiness that you need to find? And this is a very, very crucial thing that he talks about, that look, adopt a calm disposition. Make sure that your thought process is clear. And that is when you can take that significant action to achieve what you want to achieve in your life. And this is a crucial learning for all of us in this particular chapter, because he's saying that, look, if you were to adopt this, then very clearly you will be able to move forward on the path of your swadharma. Now, earlier when Arjuna asked him a question in verse 1, you remember? He said very clearly saying, okay, fine, Krishna, all this is great. Now tell me one thing. Who is better? Is a devotee who is completely devoted to you better? Or is a devotee who is pursuing knowledge and the imperishable Brahman, is he better to you? And he says, look, I want you to understand that it is these qualities of a devotee who is extremely crucial and extremely important to me. And he says, how do you define this devotee? How can we adopt this particular thing, saying, this is the way that we are going to do whatever we do towards our swadharma? What is the quality of belief? How do we become that ideal devotee? And from verse 13 to 19, okay, what we will do is that we will ask Srini to play them in Swami Brahmananda's voice. We don't have those slides here. Srini,
Karuna eva cha
just pause it, Srini.
mamo nirahankaraha.
Yeah, Srini, just pause it. Okay. So let me understand what you're going to go through now. From slide 13 to 50. Srini, we can get off the slide if you don't mind. From 13 to 50, from verse 13 to 19, I want you to pay attention carefully. And, even if you can meditate on that, that's great. Just internalize. If you can repeat it, that's also great. Just, follow what he's saying. He talks about the qualities of a devotee. And I want you to pay particular attention to a couple of things, right? And we will get back, we will examine that in great detail. But I want you to pay attention saying, who qualifies? So if you remember, he is perpetually giving us these, hidden nuggets in the Gita, saying, this is what will make for a great devotee. And now I'm telling you how you can actually practice that devotion and that faith. So Srini, will you just play those 6 or 7 stanzas from 13 to 19, please? Go ahead, Srini. And then we will interpret each of them. You can even do that slideshow.
Nirmamo nirahankaraha samadukka sukakshami santushtas satatam yogi yatatma dridha nischayah mayyarpita mano buddhihi yo madbhaktas same priyah. यस्मान्नो द्विजते लोकः लोकान्नो द्विजते च यः हर्षामर्षभयोद्वेगैः मुक्तो यः स च मे प्रियः अनपेक्षशुचिर्दक्षः उदासीनो गतव्यतः सर्वारम्भपरित्यागी यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः यो न हृष्यति न द्वेष्टि न शोचति न काङ्क्षति शुभाशुभपरित्यागी भक्तिमान् यः स मे प्रियः समशत्रौ च मित्रे च तथा मानापमानयोः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु समः सङ्गविवर्जितः निन्दास्तुतिर्मौनी सन्तुष्टो येन केनचित् अनिकेतस्थिरमतिः भक्तिमान् मे प्रियो नरः ये तु धर्म्यामृतमिदं यथो.
Thank you, Shri. Right? So he enlists about 30 different attributes. Even if you heard that carefully, and if you have the Bhagavad Gita in front of you, you can see in all the stanzas he ends with say Sacha me priya, which means that is the person who's beloved to me. So he talks about these 30 interesting qualities of a devotee that we can actually become. These are the 30 things that you can practice, okay, on how you can develop that faith within yourself to your Swadharma and to the Lord, to the higher self that you have. So here are the 30 that he talks about. So the first one he says is without any enmity. If you're someone who does not have any enmity towards anybody, okay, if you're friendly, if you're compassionate towards all beings. So he says, if you are free from enmity, friendly, compassionate towards all beings, then you are somebody who is a dear devotee to me. Then he talks about another very interesting thing. He says, look, if you are free from any ego or attachment, and I want you to also look at this very carefully. There are 13 sets of opposites that he talks about, saying that, look, if you ever get caught, as I said, when you're on this path, you will find an obstacle. And when you do, you will get, what is this obstacle that we're talking about? It's the outcomes, it's the manifestations of your outcomes. So when you do that, you will get into this set of opposites. If you recall, he talked about the Sthita Prajna in earlier chapter, in chapter 2, saying, how can you be a man of equanimity? And he's trying to tell us now how you should be free of these opposites. We'll finish this and then we'll do that. How do you get free? What are the kind of opposites that he's talking about? So he says, first, without enmity, being friendly, being compassionate towards all. Then he says, you be free from any ego or attachment. Don't get into attachment, don't get into ego. He says, you must be the same in pleasure and pain. You must be patient. You must be contented. You must be contemplative. You must have self-control. You must be confident. All of these, he says, are important. And that is the kind of person who is devoted to me. And that is somebody who is dear to me. Then he goes on to say, from whom the world gets no trouble, nor does he trouble the entire world. If you recall the definition of Swadharma that we said, while you're working on your Swadharma and you're making yourself happy, the whole world is also happy with whatever you're achieving in your life. And that is the meaning of Swadharma. So he says, from whom the world gets no trouble, and who gets no trouble from the entire world. And he says, free from emotions associated with either elation or jealousy or fear or anxiety. Get free from those kinds of emotions. And then he talks about being independent, free from any expectations. Then he says, look, you must be pure, you must be efficient. You must accept what happens to you, which means you must be untroubled by the circumstances that are going to come your way. Don't do that. You must renounce all the fruits of your action. Such a person, he says, is somebody who's dear to me. And then he goes on to explain that this is a person who neither rejoices nor he dislikes. He's free from joy and sorrow. He has renounced both good and evil that he sees in the world. And he says, such a person is somebody who's extremely dear to me. And then he says, somebody who remains the same to friend or foe, somebody who looks at honor and disgrace in the same way, heat and cold, pleasure and pain, who's free from attachment, who takes praise and criticism alike. One of the biggest manifestations of our outcomes, praise and criticism. Okay, we are either so hungry for praise or we get deflated when we are criticized. Right? Takes praise and criticism alike, who is silent, who's reticent, who's satisfied with everything that comes his way, and whose house is everywhere, which means that he believes that I am everywhere, and who has a steady mind, full of devotion to me. And he says, that is somebody who I like a lot. And that is my true devotee. Such a person is extremely, extremely dear to me. Look at these 30 things. The point is simple. Can we start being aware of these things? And look at the play of opposites that I talked to you about. Okay? That we get caught in this play of the opposites. Some of these are absolutes, but then the opposite, the play of opposites is what is very, very interesting that Krishna talks about, and the 13 play of opposites that he talks about. That he says that, look, if you can overcome, if you can come above that, if you can rise above those opposites, then you're well and truly there. And just think about it. Whenever we are getting somewhere, one of the biggest ways to get derailed is to get caught in this play of opposites. If we get caught in the play of opposites, then surely but surely you're not moving ahead on what you want to move ahead in your life. Okay, so what are these opposites that he talks about? Very interesting stuff. The first one that he talks about, he says, is somebody who does not have any enmity, who's completely friendly, who's compassionate. Okay, look at the deep meaning of that. That, look, I'm going to be friendly. Why? Because that is my nature. I don't have an enmity with the world. Maybe the world has an enmity to me, but that's okay. That's their problem, not mine. 2, he says that if you're free from any ego or attachment, okay, is it possible for you to rise above that? That this isn't the feeling of mine that I am the doer of getting attached. If you recall, we talked about the fact that if you get attached to anything, then from there desire springs, and then from desire you get into anger, and from anger you get into jealousy, and then you get into ignorance, and then everything just collapses after that. Then he talks about the third one. He says that, look, when you can handle pleasure and pain in the same way. And then he talks about another very important one, from whom the world gives no trouble, nor does the world trouble him. And then he says the fifth one, he says that free from any emotion that is associated with all these things, elation, happiness, jealousy, fear, anxiety. How can you rise above all of that? And then he goes on to talk about the other one, which he says, neither rejoices nor dislikes, which means you are not going to be allowed to get swayed by the circumstances around you. And then he says that you're free from joy or sorrow, renouncing both good and evil, overcoming that. Finally, remaining the same to friend or foe, honor and disgrace, heat and cold, pleasure and pain. So I think, there is a beautiful roadmap that has been put for all of us, saying that here is a fabulous roadmap that Krishna is laying down for us, saying, if you are able to get out of that play of opposites, that is bound to happen, which means, can you not allow these outcomes and the manifestations of the outcomes to go to your head? Can you get out of that? Is it possible for us, when we are working on this journey, and this is something that he is talking to Arjuna, saying that, look, as I said, this is the last chapter, from 7 to 12, which is entirely about devotion, about bhakti. And he says, this is the greatness of the Lord. And he says, if you can practice this within, then you are well and truly on your way to achieving your Swadharma. So is it possible for us to do all? No. But can you do an audit and say, which of these seeming opposites in my life am I getting caught under? Am I getting into too much of pleasure? Or am I getting into too much of pain? Is that an opposite that is holding me back in life? Is it this ego and attachment that is holding me back in life? Is it praise or criticism that is holding me back in life? Which of these opposites, if you can do an audit and say that, look, whenever, I mean, sometime back we talked about it saying, so is it possible for us to do an audit and say, which of these opposites is holding me back in my life? And can I develop a system, a process by saying that whatever I'm doing, all of this that I do, I am doing it as a tribute. I'm doing it as an offering to the Supreme Lord. And can I start operating from that perspective? So that these seeming opposites that are holding us all back in life are things that we can overcome and we can move out of. So recognize these seeming opposites. Look, all of that he talks about, criticism, praise, remaining the same, honor and disgrace. Okay, who is honoring you? I mean, some organization comes and calls me and says, Mr. Ramshishu, we want to give you an award. And I feel terrific about it. First of all, who is this organization? Or somebody has sent a message on some group saying, you're the worst fellow on earth. Now, who is this person? Is this something that is holding me back? And if it is, can you do something about it? And can you do this audit and say, look, let me sit down quietly today and figure out, am I getting too swayed by the play of these opposites? And therefore, whatever action I take, is it happening in a way that is completely influenced by my so-called impression of what may happen? And therefore, can I get out of that play of opposites? Okay, you're doing something great, there will be a manifestation to that outcome. But can I rise above that? Is Krishna's example to us. And it's fantastic. Read that chapter again. Hear this last, 13 to 19 again. It's a power-packed thing that you can actually look at and say, here are some beautiful things. Out of those 30, there are these 13 opposites that he talks about. Figure out, is there anything there that you need to work on and you need to overcome in your life? Because that is your Swadharma and that is what you need to go to. So Srini, can we go to the last slide, last verse in this particular chapter, please?
ये तु धर्म्यामृतमिदं यथोक्तं पर्युपासते श्रद्दधानामत्परमाः भक्तास्तेतीव मे प्रियाः।
तो भक्त श्रद्धावान तथा मुझे ही परम लक्ष्य समझने वाले हैं और इस यथोक्त धर्ममय अमृत का अर्थात धर्ममय जीवन का पालन करते हैं, वे मुझे अतिशय प्रिय हैं.
Okay. So he ends this chapter with this particular verse and he says very clearly, those devotees, okay, who practice all that I've stated with faith and devotion, regard me as the Supreme Lord, those devotees are extremely beloved by me. So a wonderful path has been laid to all of us, saying that, look, if you are going to walk on this path of devotion, okay, he has laid this very clear path to us, saying, how are you going to do it when you practice devotion? So all of these, these, as I said, out of those 13 opposites, figure out what is holding you back. That is one. The other facts that have been put there, there are another 17 odd attributes that he talks about. What can you constantly and consistently practice? If you remember, he says that, look, this is the abhyasa that you need to do. If you can't be completely devoted to me, no problem. Can you actually start practicing it? So from the other 17, can you pick 2 or 3 or 4 and say, can I start contemplating on this every day and work in a way that I will not get attached to the manifestations of my action? And this is his beautiful message that he has shared with us in this small but power-packed chapter that he talks to us all about. So these are the enabling ways that he talks about to enhance your faith, And you know, faith, they say, you know, there's a very famous statement that faith springs eternal in our heart. So if we ensure that such enabling thoughts emanate from the heart, and we figure out a way of doing this in such a way that we master our mind, we master our thought process, and we don't allow any unenabling thoughts to come into our mind. How do you do that? And he's very clearly said that, look, by adopting this bhakti, by adopting this devotion, by believing and by relinquishing everything to this higher self, to this Lord that is there. So if we can adopt that particular attitude, then any doubts that may come in our way, and doubts will come in our way, any doubts that come in our way on that path of achieving what we want to, you have clearly a roadmap on how you can overcome those doubts, how you can overcome any of those challenges that will be there. Because remember one thing, when you're on this path, doubts will happen, opposition will happen, obstacles will happen. You will need to apply those brakes to the car, but you will have to restart and keep moving ahead. And when you want to do that, how can you be focused? How can you adopt an attitude saying that, look, all what I'm doing is with a spirit of offering to a higher divinity. And therefore, I am a mere instrument in what is happening here. If you recall, when we would go and build our schools, we were just an instrument doing it. We were just people who would do it. And therefore, here is a fantastic lesson to all of us. And do read it. Do read those 13 to 19 again. Pick and choose, as I said, 3 or 4 by which you can enhance your devotion. Look at those play of opposites and say that, look, here are some certain stuff that are possibly derailing me right now. What do I need to overcome? How do I need to get onto that path? So with this, we finish chapter number 12. And Om Tat Sat, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're open to any questions, any observations, any thoughts. So quick recap of the entire chapter begins with Arjuna's question, and then he goes on to say that, look, the devotee who practices with faith and devotion is somebody who's dear for me. And he says, you fix your mind on me. And if you do that, you will get peace, you will get happiness. And then he talks about all those lovely qualities. And finally, he ends by saying, you do what you want, but practice it with faith, practice it with devotion. That is his message to us. Om Tat Sat.
I have a question here. I'm slightly very confused right now. So when we spoke about these attributes that we need to imbibe to make our devotion towards Him complete, imbibing these attributes would mean detaching ourselves from emotions.
Huh?
How does one do that?
Detaching yourself from the outcomes, Rajiv. Okay? So, you've delivered a great speech, Rajiv. Some people are going to be praising you. Some people are going to criticize you, Rajiv. Right? There will always people who will come and tell you, but Rajiv, you did not acknowledge this past president. You did not acknowledge that past president. Always people will do that. There are always people who will come and tell you, Rajiv, what a speech that was. Fantastic, boss. Both are going to happen, no, Rajiv? But the point is that when you're delivering your speech or when you're writing your speech, if you're only going to be concerned about that I want to go down in the history that this is the best speech any president ever made in the history of this association, then you will never be able to make that speech, Rajiv. That's his point to us, saying that, look, it's not detached from emotions. It is the play of opposites. It's the fact is that, look, can you recognize that these manifestations will happen and such things may happen, Rajiv? Can you recognize that? But don't allow your action now to get influenced by that. That is his whole point to us. As human beings, of course, Rajiv, who doesn't like praise? Yeah. Who does like praise, no? Who doesn't get affected by criticism? Everybody gets affected by criticism, right? We're human beings, Rajiv. But the fact that somebody may praise you or the fact that somebody may criticize you should not determine the course of the action that you're going to take. That is his whole point, Rajiv. Okay? So if that praise or criticism, Rajiv, are holding you back, then don't allow that to happen. Okay? The anticipation of somebody praising you or the anticipation of somebody criticizing you, let that not hold you back from making that speech that you want to from your heart. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So whenever you're creating something, do it with your heart. Do it with full devotion. Do it, you're baking a cake, Rajiv. Some people will like the cake, some people will not like the cake. What to do? Right? It's bound to happen. But right now, can you pour your heart out into baking that particular cake? That's his whole point to us. Okay? You will get affected, yes.
Ram,
Yeah.
Ram,
Yes, Rahul, go ahead, please.
30 attributes that you talked about,
Yeah.
the opposites,
13 opposites, yeah.
13 opposites. At any given point in time, no matter with devotion or whichever way you're doing something, you're always going to be situations where you're going to fluctuate between the two extremes. The 13 attributes are two extremes: anger versus joy, jealousy versus or criticism versus praise. You're going to keep fluctuating between the two. The point is, how do you control that? Because at any given point in time, this is going to happen. An obstacle comes in your way and it is angering you because, how do you get into a state where you realize that I am closer to the other extreme than I should be?
So Rahul, one of the great ways to do this, from a management consulting perspective, Rahul, is, one of the biggest enemies, you understand this from a management perspective or even from an entrepreneur perspective or from any perspective, is procrastination. Right? So you procrastinate. Why do you procrastinate? You procrastinate because of the fact that you don't want to do this specific action right now. And you just continue with that particular, you want to do this, but you don't do it. Why don't you do it? Primarily because of the fact that you are caught. Will this happen? Will that happen? What if this happens? What if that happens? You're caught in that, right? In that trap. So that's why I'm saying, do an audit. What are all the actions that you thought you should take yesterday? Just do it for yesterday, nothing more. What are all the actions that I thought I must take yesterday? Okay? And what all happened? What all didn't happen? Those actions that did not happen yesterday, why did they not happen? What was the problem? Which of these opposites brought me down? What could be the reason? And if you do that analysis for yourself, Rahul, you'll figure out that, okay, these are certain things that are worrying me. It could be fear, it could be jealousy, it could be anxiety, it could be criticism, it could be the fact that I'm not going to get praised. Whatever those opposites that he talked about. Okay, envy, he talks about so many interesting ones. So can you actually figure this out and then say, all right, now that I know what is it that is making me procrastinate in life? What is it that is not allowing me to move on that path of my Swadharma? I've now worked this out. Okay? Now that you worked it out, can you now start figuring out a way of addressing that specific issue? I think that is the important point, Rahul. Okay? The fact that we don't even go into that analysis, the fact that we get blind, to the fact that we procrastinate so much in life, That is the challenge that we've got. So here is a beautiful way to go back, do that simple audit. Just do it for yesterday alone. You don't have to do it for. At the time, if you've got all your actions listed down, if you have your to-do list ready, then you can do it maybe for the last 1 week or 10 days or whatever it is. But if you don't, just figure this out. And then you will know that, look, this is what. So then he says, look, when you recognize that, I am now giving you a solution to that. Do perform that action, renouncing those fruits of the action, because the person who does that will get peace of mind and the enabling thoughts required to do it. And that's his whole point to us. So this is a fantastic guide for all of us to take the kind of action. That's his point.
Ram, can I say something?
Ramji.
Can I say something, Ram?
Yes, please go ahead, Ashutosh. Sorry.
Now, when Krishna says, that जो भक्ति करते हैं वो तो उनको ज्यादा पसंद है, या तो वो उनको मोक्ष का मार्ग दिखाते हैं, so does he undermines the importance of knowledge and karma?
No, that's what he says. No, both paths are good for me. Anybody who pursues that path of knowledge and wisdom is also dear to me, there is no doubt. But his whole point is this, that look, as human beings, it may not be possible for us to go completely in that path. Okay? So who is the person who pursues that path of knowledge and wisdom? Forget the controversy, maybe somebody like a Mahatma Gandhi. Okay? Maybe somebody like a Mother Teresa. Okay? But those, Ashutosh, are very few and far between. I mean, these are people who are, who have reached a certain different level of life. Okay? For people, that's why he says, that in this particular chapter, I think in verse 3 and 4, he says, look, those who worship the imperishable are devoted to me. I mean, I like them a lot. No doubt about that. But he's very clearly saying that, look, that is a difficult path to pursue. So can you do this on a daily basis is his exhortation to us. And he says, look, if you do this on a daily basis, that devotee is dear to me. That's what he's trying to tell us.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
I have a Ramji. Good morning.
Thanks, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I have a question. When we are on our path of Swadharma, then how can we differentiate between trust and faith? I really want to understand a thin line which is between trust and faith.
You see, you can't get faith without trust, no? You must trust in your own abilities, and then you will develop faith in your ability, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, trust and then faith in that cycle. Okay. You first trust in your abilities, and then you'll develop the faith. You trust your employee or your co-worker or your boss or whatever it is, or your partner or something like that. And then you will develop that faith in that particular person, saying that yes, so when your trust is repeatedly not abused, let us say, then you will start getting faith in that fact, right?
Correct.
If you're a golfer, if you're a golfer or a cricketer or a footballer or whatever it is, if you're a sportsman,
I'm a golfer.
you're a golfer, right? So if you trust yourself that, look, I can do this putt. In golf, it is actually the short game that's more important than the long one.
Yeah,
so
correct.
When you get to that putt, can you trust your ability to putt the ball, when you're on that green, right? Only when that trust that you have in your ability is not misplaced and is proven, then you start getting that faith and that belief that, yes, I can, my short game can improve. Like that. It's as simple as that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Just to add here,
Yes,
there's a very personal example. Whenever I lose faith in whatever I have to do, I go back to the YouTube and I watch an innings of Sachin Tendulkar, 241 runs in Sydney, where he didn't play a single cover drive, which is the staple of a batsman. He said, that's getting me out. I will not play it and I will get the runs. And he did it. And that is a supreme example of faith and trust in yourself.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's a personal example. I always go back and watch that and I say, okay, I can do it. Now I'm going to do it. Sorry to.
No, very good. Good share, Rahul. Fantastic. You see, we've now got another interesting input. So go back to YouTube and check that particular innings. Fantastic. That's a great thought.
Ramji, can I ask something?
Please go ahead, Reshma.
In one verse, he says that you must have that much devotion, then the life and death is something that he will grant us. So my thing is that isn't your life and death both like already fixed by him before you are here, irrelevant of your devotion in that whole journey? But let's say if you're devoted in that whole journey, then does that change, or how does it go about?
See, the point really is this, that whenever he talks about life and death, you must remember the context that he is talking about also, Reshma, and then we need to bring that context to today's context. Arjuna is clearly very concerned about life and death, and who's going to live and who's going to die and stuff like that, right? So when he talks about that, saying that, look, if you're devoted to me, don't worry, I will take care of you across this bandhan of Janma and Mrityu, which is the biggest, see, those of us who are alive are scared, when are we going to die?
Yeah.
Right? And therefore you don't live. Okay? His whole point is this, that look, you have that faith and that devotion and that bhakti in me, even in this, bandhan of life and death, that ocean of life and death. I mean, from a mystic mythology perspective, it is said that, there is this river called life, and, when you cross this particular river called life, you will die. Okay, when you die, you need somebody to escort you across that particular river, and then you move on to the next higher plane in life. That's a story. Okay, that's a way that has been described. So what he is saying is that, look, even that journey, if you want, I will take care of you. Okay, this journey of life and death also is something that with devotion, I will help you cross that particular journey. Have that faith, so develop that faith that even that journey I will take care of you. My devotee, whoever is dear to me, whoever is my devotee, I will help you there. So what he is trying to tell us is not to have that blind faith, okay, but to develop that bhakti, to develop that faith, to develop that devotion, that you will be taken care of, that you have enough within you, And like I keep saying, do I believe personally that there is a supreme being somewhere? There is somebody out there. There is a God out there. Yes, I do. Do I have an intense faith in that? Yes, I do. But I've also met a lot of people who've turned around and said that God is within me. So I say, great. I mean, whatever it is that you want to believe that there is this God in you. There is that supreme higher self within you, and that supreme higher self will always come to your rescue. But can you develop that devotion and faith in yourself? Okay, that's one way of looking at it, right? There's another way of looking at it, is saying that, look, I have so much of faith and devotion that there is some higher power, there is some supreme power somewhere. Let's call him God right now, or goddess right now. I don't want the goddesses to get angry with me right now, saying, God bolta hai, goddess ki naam hi nahi le raha hai. So, if there is a goddess somewhere, or if there is a God somewhere, and that goddess or that God can help, fantastic, yeah? See, remember one very important point. In this chapter, he is very clearly saying that faith can move mountains. Yeah? You must have that faith in yourself. You must have that faith. Okay? And if you do, and then start doing all your actions in a way that it is to that faith, then you will get the results that you want. Okay? So if you recall, in one of the chapters earlier, he talked about, the 4 or 5 types of action. We discussed that, inaction, which is what I was telling Rahul, procrastination, okay, or reaction. You're doing it because somebody is telling you to do it. Or inefficient action, your heart is not in it. Or significant action, which means you really, really are pushing the envelope that day. And significant action without any expectations, which is the highest. What he's saying is this, that look, have that faith, develop that faith. Now, whether that is internal, external, that is your calling. You know, here we are not here to say that no, this is not the right way or that is not the right way. To each his own, no? Some of us have intense faith in Sai Baba. Great. Some of us have intense faith in, Mata. Great. Some of us have intense faith in Balaji. I mean, great. I mean, it's entirely your individual calling. I mean, if you recall some time back, he's told us that it doesn't matter what way you worship. Ultimately, you're worshipping me. That's the whole point.
Thank you.
Any other observation, thought, share, question? Pankaj ji, your rice smile is giving you away. Go ahead. Come on. I assure you nobody is going to send you a WhatsApp message today.
Good morning. We need to give a name to our group, so that, we recognize each other and feel a part of that Gita group. I have no questions right now because you're talking about faith, and I was smiling because I was recollecting the times when my faith has been endorsed. And I was smiling because some of it was about my 12th board exam. And, I was thinking whether I should tell in this group or not. And I said, better not say it here. So that's why I was smiling, So, but I thought I will tell to some friends when we stand next to a bar sometime. Okay, so I was smiling because of that. But it's a nice, and I was thinking of so many people have faith, and we ourselves have faith in so many different things, not only one. And, and we have so many faith in so many people, apart from the Almighty, our friends sometimes who, can help us get out of a difficult situation. So I was thinking of all.
Even with children, Pankaj, even with children, it doesn't matter how old your child is, whether, your child may be 25, 30, 35, whatever, to get them through this process of believing in themselves, to, get them to believe, not to have a blind faith, sab acha ho jayega. Okay? But to get them through this process of trusting themselves, to believing in that faith, to have that devotion, to have that faith in themselves, to get them to that particular level. I think that's a very important thing that we as parents can do. So this particular chapter, for instance, is also a great chapter from the way you can transfer this faith that you have. It's not just a blind faith, but it is a very actionable faith to your children. Okay? Because I keep saying that, we've reached what we've reached in our life, and we've reached it quite well. I mean, God is somewhere there, somebody has been kind to us, and we've reached a certain level in our life. But they've got a whole lifetime left. So can we do it in such a way that they would, they develop that faith and belief in themselves? If you recall some time back, I think we talked about the fact, prepare them for the road ahead. Don't prepare the road for them. The road ahead is full of problems. The road ahead is full of thorns. The road ahead is full of obstacles. Far more than what we've faced. We are the lucky generation. We will have even more. So can we inculcate this faith in them? So that's a great point.
So the Bonvita ad looks like inspired from somewhere here.
My dear friend, believe me, I can assure you of one thing. Some of the great writers in the advertising business very, very regularly dip into the insights from the Bhagavad Gita. And that is why those, some of these ads, some of these films, some of these poems, some of these paintings resonate a lot more with you than others. Why? Because these insights that are there are fantastic.
Good morning.
Hi, Preeti, tell me.
Yeah, Ram, as you said, to inculcate these good values in the children, it just reminded me when Mehak Nikhil were young, I always used to tell them to spell impossible, and break it up and tell them that I am possible. So
Yes.
if you are really dedicated and you really are sincere with what you're doing, success is the only result. So this was the formula which, like, always I used to keep reminding them. And today times, have changed where, at times when I may be a bit doubtful, they come up to me and they tell me, Mama, have you forgotten the spelling of impossible?
And look at that, look at that wonderful shoot that Nikhil has just completed.
Yes. That was his passion. And
That guy is now in his way.
and with everybody's blessings and all, he's already booked up 8 more shoots.
So he's well and truly on his Swadharma right now, So can we get him to, can you start sharing these thoughts with them, saying that, look, the biggest, Rajiv, the biggest roadblock, the biggest roadblock, the biggest speed breaker, the biggest pothole that Krishna hit is when Arjuna lays his bow down and says, I'm not going to fight here. Can you imagine? The journey of Sri Krishna on that road, and he's clipping at 180, 200 kilometers an hour. And, he suddenly hits this pothole, he hits this roadblock, he hits this, median of the road. And the driver says, I'm not going to drive anymore. Arey, boss, kya kar ke rahe tu? Right? So, this is bound to happen to even the kids, no? That they will hit that roadblock in life. They will hit that obstacle. They will hit that pothole.
Ram, can I say something?
And I hope they do. Because, I hope they do. And I hope they do. I hope they hit that early in life. Because each time they do, then they will come up, they will realize their own inner resilience and work on it to move ahead. Sorry, somebody wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I am just agreeing with what Preeti said about impossible. We teach our children that nothing is impossible, but we don't teach them that, okay, in case it is not fulfilled, whatever you're doing is not happening, what then? So then they get a little disillusioned. Then they say, humne bola tha na. You see, every child comes back to the parent at some time and says, maine to bola tha na aapko. You let me do it my way. So the children, I feel, they want to experience things from their own experiences. They do not want to follow what we are teaching them many times.
But the point is this, that and they are absolutely right in that, Renu. They're absolutely right in that. Because believe me when I'm saying this, the road that they are going to travel on is a road that we don't even have a clue about. Because all our combined experiences of the roads that we have been on, Renu, till now, and the road that they are going to be traversing in life, we have really, really no clue on. So that is one. But having said that, just because you hit an obstacle in life and it doesn't work, how are you going to, develop that inner resilience? How are you going to develop that faith to keep at it, to keep working at it? That is, I think, what we can teach our children. And that's the time that you can ask them, saying that, look, okay, what is it that is preventing you from getting up and walking again? What are you worried about? What are this play of opposites that you're concerned about? Can you now work on developing the faith in yourself that you will overcome those obstacles that will come in your way? Okay? How can I help you do that? They will find their own answers, quite honestly. They will find. But what help they need from us is this wisdom. That while the road that you're going to be traveling is a completely different road, there is no doubt about that. But let me tell you that when I traveled on that road myself, that road at that point was nothing like the road that my parents traveled on.
True.
And therefore, that road that I traveled on was a very complex road that I traveled on. My parents never traveled on that road. But what my parents did teach me is that, look, if there is something like this that happens, then how do you talk about it? How do you overcome it? How do you seek help? How do you figure out a way? Okay? And quite honestly, when we were on that road of life, we didn't have all this help, yeah. It was a lonely path that we went on, making mistakes, falling, getting into scraps.
Yeah,
hurting
our
ourselves.
parents did not know what we are studying, what we are doing. Nowadays, parents encourage their children so much, and so much is open to them,
Absolutely true, because at the age of 16, my younger son comes and tells me, Dad, I've got admission in a college in Canada. I'm going. And 6 months later, he says, I don't even want money from you. I'm supporting myself. And he's 31 today. So he's lived about 15 years on his own terms. He's learned his own lessons. Of course, he's in touch with us. We keep talking. He's got his own sense of humor. But when he was leaving and my mother and my wife were aghast at how am I letting him do, he turned and told them, it's my life. Let me do what I want to do. Fail, I know you are there, but let me do what I want to do. So at some point in time, you got to take a very conscious decision that this is the path they've chosen. Let them be. Let them be. It's no point going through that standard route that we went through. 12th karo, engineering karo, IIT jao, IIM jao was the route that we were being forced to take, and a lot of us took. A lot of us today are a little unhappy. Yaar, ye kya kiya? I could have done this. I would have played my cricket. I would have done my acting on stage and stuff like that. But it's all over and done with. So when it comes to your own children, now let them find their own space. That's the way I looked at it.
No, that's a tough call, Rahul. When Maitri told me that he wants
One thing, he's been successful, so you can say that. Supposing he was not too successful in what he ventured out to do, then
what? Correct.
There was a fallback, no?
Right. Then you.
There was a fallback. In our case too, we didn't have the guts to get up and tell our parents, I don't want to do that. You see 3 Idiots.
Yeah, they won't listen.
They won't listen.
Parents would never listen.
You saw that character who went and goes and tells his father, I want to be a wildlife photographer. And he says, you won't even be able to. And then the whole issue, what will people say? Blah, blah, blah. I've sacrificed. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. All those emotions came back. In my case, it was a gamble. It was a risk. Then I saw his determination to do it. I said, do it.
I think Renu, to get a perspective there, I think the point really is this, that look, what if they fail? They will.
They will. Yeah.
They can.
I don't use the word fail, but they will fall. Not fail, but they will fall. And I hope they fall.
Not be successful in what they ventured out.
So I'm saying they will fall. Okay. And it's good if they fall, nothing wrong. But can we give them this message saying that, look, can you develop that devotion? Can you develop that faith in yourself, in your ability, so that you will be able to get up and start walking again? That is something that I can help you with. Okay? I can't protect you from that fall. I can't be there to cushion your fall. I can't be there to ensure that you don't fall. I'm not going to do that. But should you at some point of time fall, then at least. All right. So I think we'll close today, Anurag, with your permission. And ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow it's a very, very interesting chapter. This a slightly difficult chapter because he talks about two very interesting things. You know, what is the kshetra and what is the kshetrajna? What is the field and who's the knower of the field? How do you recognize this? And it's another very beautiful chapter that we're going to go on. So from now onwards, the entire the focus of the program of the Gita changes. Now we're going to be talking in terms of how do you actually liberate yourself. So the first 6 chapters, if you recall, was entirely on who are you, and it was an inquiry into the self and how you can pursue selfless action. Okay, that was the first 6 chapters. That issue there, and then the second 6 chapters was entirely about jnana. Okay, which is what is God? How do you realize God? How do you check God everywhere around you? And how do you recognize the beauty of God in whatever you're doing? And now we move into the third phase of the Bhagavad Gita, which is how do you actually adopt an attitude of liberation? Okay? So it gets into a completely different plane right now. And we will enjoy that. And chapter 14. Chapter 14 is again another very interesting thing. He keeps alluding to the gunas, to the Sattva Guna, Raja Guna, and the Tama Guna. Of course, in chapter 14, we will get very deep into recognizing each of these. So while we're working on our, Swadharma and our journey to realize our inner happiness, let me close today's session. Om Tat Sat. Om Namo.
Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, everybody.